All right. My name is Herbert Ricardo. I'm a professor at Indian River State College as well as Czech University of Life Sciences. I'm teaching theories of management this semester as a study block here at Czech University of Life Sciences in beautiful Prague, snowy Prague, actually. My background is healthcare administration, of which I was an administrator in nonprofit and for-profit healthcare environments for a decade prior to teaching. And I've been teaching now for 25 years, 2.5 decades. And most of my teaching is management, industrial psychology, ethics, and I also teach international business. And the concepts that I usually try to bring is the human side to business. And I try to encourage students to understand how all these particular courses and classes are interrelated. Because once they leave the classroom, they go into the workplace. That's where it's all going to come together, and they're going to use that in their workplace. The other thing is I've done some writing. I enjoy writing about business and management. So if you're ever able to buy one of my books on Amazon, I think I can say that, you can go ahead and look for it there. But for the most part, I thoroughly enjoy teaching. That's something that has always inspired me. And also, I live half my time actually most of my time in Florida. But then any time that I have free, I come over to Europe and specifically spend time in Prague. So I thoroughly love being in Europe.
Good morning, Dr. Ricardo. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We're really happy that we got the opportunity to at least interview you about some questions and doubts that we had about things and we wanted to speak to you about. And as a student in this management theory study block that we have here in Czech University of Life Sciences, we really appreciated the breadth of topics about McGregor's theory that we mentioned, the influence of AI, and giving extensive background. We were given an introduction before you came here. We had like a word file where you were introduced to us, and we saw that you had extensive background in healthcare management and especially in organizational culture and human psychology as well. And we even noticed that in the classes that you have a good knack for it as well. And we are particularly interested in exploring the practical applications of these things, of these theories in the modern workplace, because we currently, as recently going to graduate students, we are kind of exploring those options, and we are somewhere in there as well. And we just want to gain some deeper insights in the concepts that what we are truly studying. Can we really implement those into our workplace balance and everything? So if you don't mind, can I start with my questions?
Great, absolutely. And thank you so much for the invitation allowing me to do this. This is terrific.
Thank you so much. So in the classes you mentioned about theory X and theory Y. My question is, from your experience, which one do modern managers actually practice today?
Yeah. So theory X and theory Y, obviously, it's a theory by McGregor, where theory X, the idea behind that, it's usually a manager who doesn't trust their employees, and theory Y with managers who do trust their employees, right? And so how you manage your employees will be based on what you think about them. I tend to think, and I think in the lectures I shared, a lot of it is going to be a balance between both. Um, Obviously, new employees, managers aren't going to necessarily trust them too well in the sense of because they've not been familiar with their capabilities, their knowledge, and everything else. So for the most part, they kind of watch them, maybe micromanage. So that's a little bit more closer to theory X. And then, of course, as the individual and the employee does well and they show their capability, the manager. So I tend to think that um, Gen Zs and millennials really like managers who don't always micromanage. So I think to answer your question, probably there's more theory Y management style than theory X, I would think.
And do you think you would personally be implementing theory Y more than theory X?
I definitely do. Yeah. Whenever I work with a team and whenever I'm working with employees, I'm very trusting of my employees, and quickly I try to gain their trust. Sure.
Yeah, in the class we've also felt that before. So
Good.
I would
I hope
say,
so.
yeah, I would put you in theory Y as well.
Good. Thank you.
So my second question is about AI and management. And how is an AI reshaping the role of the manager, and what skills do leaders need the most right now in terms of AI changing different aspects in the corporate world?
Yeah, so AI is a tool.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not an entity by itself. Artificial intelligence behaves in many different ways. There are different platforms. What I would believe is that each manager needs to have as much information about the different tools available. So, in other words, if you're an employee, but certainly if you're a manager, I think what you don't do is you don't just look at one particular tool, one particular AI platform. You try to find all and you try to understand each one because each one behaves differently, just like a tool in a toolbox, right? Even though they're called tools, they're different, right? Well, even though they're called AI, artificial intelligence, they do behave differently, right? So the idea is that you try to be as knowledgeable so that whatever the task is that you're working on, you're using the right AI software for it.
And do you think managers somewhere around your age are having some difficulties coping with these AI technology because you've been living with these systems that you have been working on for maybe like 30, 20 years, and out of nowhere you see this AI coming in. So has it been like a difficult step, you as a point of a manager? Like,
Yeah, as individuals get older, okay, they tend to always fall back on what they know more of, right? So there's no doubt that older managers um, may find it threatening. I encourage always, I don't care how old you are, that you really should try to embrace as much as you can, um, the different aspects. Sure, I think that the older you are, because you haven't been around technology as much, it might be, the learning curve might be harder. Oh, well, that's that we call that progress, right? We call that advancement. So I definitely try to learn. And even the week before I came here, I was in a conference and learning more about different types of AI systems. So yeah, we definitely have to do that.
yeah, perfect. So the next question is about 5 functions of management, and which functions do you believe AI will transform the most in the next decade in terms of management?
Oh boy. Okay, which one? So the five are planning, organizing, staffing, uh, directing, and controlling. Right? Those are the five. And which one is going to be different? Staffing is going to be difficult, specifically based on that last question. Based on AI, a lot of organizations and companies are having to adjust with a higher level of technology. With a higher level of technology, maybe they're going to find that they don't need certain workers to be doing certain jobs. But what we still have to do is we still have to put people to work. We cannot allow a society where people are not working. So I think staffing and how people work is going to be a challenge, and I think that's the one. Again, directing and controlling, organizing and planning, those are all functions we all have to do. But I think how we work with employees, I think that one's going to be the bigger challenge in the next 20 years or so.
And is there some advice you could give us aspiring people that are going into this workplace and entering with these new changes of AI? Is there something that you would recommend to us recent graduates that we could do to at least put ourselves in better positions in the market?
Yeah, yeah. Knowledge. Okay. Um, the competitive advantage that an individual is going to have is the more knowledge they have. So so I would learn as much as you can about AI and the different platforms and how you can use them. So don't just know about them, but actually play in the sandbox. Use it so that you're skilled in it. And then also you've got to try to connect with other people who value it, right? Who value the skills now that you have. That's where I think the knowledge of AI will help you. Because again, it's not AI is a tool. and we are humans that are using the tool. So be skilled in that.
I understand, for sure. So, from the more organizational ethics way, from the lens of moral development, where do you think most companies stand today?
So when we're talking about Lawrence Kohlberg, three stages of moral development, um, we look at the pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional, right? And either people are making decisions on consequence, or people are making decisions based on what everybody else is doing, or they're seeing a higher way of achievement. I think what happens is we tend to, just because of who we are as humans, we tend to do what other people do. We tend to do what's conventional. So in the moral development, as we study ethics, what we tend to do is we look at what other people are doing. And if other people are doing it, and there's a lot of people doing it, then we tend to think, well, then that's the right thing to do. That's not always the case, right? But I think that's where businesses and organizations operate. Um, uh, uh, Kind of back to the AI. Companies started with AI. Well, companies didn't start getting onto the AI bandwagon until other companies did. Then when everybody's doing it, now everybody is talking about it, right? I think maybe there's going to come a time when things will like settle a little bit, right? But in in business and organizations, we tend to follow trends, and when there's a good amount of customers or environments that behave a certain way, we just kind of follow it.
Yeah,
So I think that's where that's where we are in I think the ethical arena.
everybody's just following on.
Yeah, we tend to, we tend to follow the masses.
Yeah, we've been following.
Yep.
That's correct. And my next question is about employee engagement. And what is the biggest misconception managers have about engaging their people or their staff?
Boy, oh boy, that's really that's I think that's the hardest question you've asked me, um, because employee engagement is not always easy to see,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've got employees who do their work, and they do their work very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what's the difference between somebody who does their work well, but someone who's truly engaged? And not only they're doing their work well, but then also they're helping others with their work. They're understanding how their work influences other areas of the organization. Doing your work well is good, right? But then doing it well so that you know how it influences and affects the other departments, how you can help the other departments. Now suddenly you're at a higher level of working. So, um, where do managers see this? I think if managers feel like they're too busy to focus on employees, they might miss that, right? So managers who spend enough time working with their employees, learning about their employees, those are the ones that will know whether or not the employee is truly engaged. And of course, the employee can show that they're really wanting to know more about the organization.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Those are just the questions for me. I think I had it before.
Sure.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
okay, sure.
Once more for actually giving us this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you.
Before we get to the serious questions or to other questions, I'd really like to find out, well, when you're grading, what do you prefer, coffee or tea?
Oh boy, oh boy. It depends what mood I'm in. Actually, if it's early in the morning, it's going to be coffee. Got to get that start up. If it's mid-afternoon, I'm thinking I'm going to do my tea time.
That's interesting. But how do you then, whilst you're marking exams or taking care of the exams, what do you prefer, coffee or tea? And how does that affect your grading system?
The actual liquid coffee or tea?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, the way that I grade is I make sure I grade a whole class together. I don't tend to grade some class, some students, and then go away, and then a couple of hours later or a day later continue. When I'm grading, I grade a whole class at the same time. So if I'm grading the class in the morning, I'm drinking coffee and I'm really driven, and I'm pretty hyper. Okay. So probably I'm very clear-minded and I'm very strict in my grading. Okay. If I'm grading in the afternoon, I'm more relaxed. I'm drinking my tea. I'm being more, maybe I'm a little more lenient. Of course, you will never know whether or not it's been a morning or an afternoon, but my goodness, this is going to be recorded. Now people all know how I grade.
Oh, wonderful. That's perfect.
That was a good question.
Yeah. You actually spoke a bit about the millennials and the Gen Zs,
Mm.
and my question comes within the side of your education system. Although you've been teaching for quite some time, and this have been the groups that you have been educating. What really motivates the Gen Zs and the millennials beyond salary and flexibility?
So when you study generations, you have early and late times of the generation, right? So you've got late millennials who behave more like Gen Zs, right? Um, what are the characteristics on these individuals and the work environment? Millennials learned a lot from Xers, Generation X, Gen X. So there are millennials who do think similarly to X, although as they're getting older, they don't want to put in all the time Gen Xers did. Okay, uh, but they're pretty motivated, and I see that even though that generation was the first generation that we saw that wanted more relaxed work environments. Okay, where baby boomers and Gen Xers didn't they didn't say, I want a more relaxed environment. They just knew they had to adhere to whatever the work environment was. Millennials, it was a generation that says, no, let's have more comfortable bean bags and let's drink coffee during the time. Let's have these, and so they were trying to create the environment and modify it to themselves. Gen Zs seeing this, okay, and spending more time on technology are now not only do they look at the physical environment, but now they're bringing technology into it. So Gen Zs tend to look at the working environment more in a technological view, okay, um, uh, but also in a non-threatening. They don't like the threatening. They like to have a little bit of conversation, but in a way, not even too much conversation because they like to spend time on their computers and on their phones. So I hope that kind of helped out.
Um, I'm going to ask a couple of questions under management and leadership. You've spoken to us about this, but as AI is taking over the administrative areas and administrative tasks, do you think that leadership becomes a more human-centered side, or what do you think about it?
Yeah. So um, with the use of technology or the advancement of technology and specifically artificial intelligence and all the tasks that we're having to do with computing, there's no doubt that motivating and driving employees and managers in the human sense is going to become more critical. There's no doubt. Um, so in the sense of management versus leaders, in my lectures, I talk that there's not a differentiation. I talk about that leaders ought to be good managers and managers ought to be good leaders. And you don't manage machinery, you manage people. You don't lead machinery, you lead people. And so I think that working with Gen Zs specifically and millennials, this human characteristic and having them to buy into the emotional connection is a true um, critical aspect to the future.
Perfect. And this brings us to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And my question is, which of these groups do you think will thrive more in the future workplace?
Yeah, wow. Okay. So entrepreneur is a term that we're all familiar with. It's people who are starting businesses, who see a problem and they try to solve it. And generally, an entrepreneur is they're doing it on their own. They've started the business by themselves. They've started a software company or whatever it might be. So they've had to use their own resources. They've had to use uh, um, maybe family money. They're going into debt, trying to figure out how to do it. They're by themselves. They're alone a lot. That's an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone who's entrepreneurial within the organization. And so they have the support. They might have the resources, the funding, and working with others within the organization. So in a sense, that individual um, doesn't risk as much. But then, of course, the benefits may not necessarily be there too, because the proprietary would be owned by the company. Now, moving further into the future, I've noticed, I think more of a pattern that what companies are doing is it seems that they're spending less time on research and development in companies. Now, if you're looking at state organizations and government, of course, they do a lot of their research there. But I'm finding that entrepreneurs are starting their own businesses, they're starting their own environments, and then they're selling them to businesses to make money. And I think there'll continue to be an area there where that will continue to flourish more so sometimes. I'd love to see a lot more entrepreneurial behavior in companies. I do. I try to encourage that.
I want to talk a little bit about the future.
Mm.
Let's talk about 2035. If you
Okay.
could design an ideal organization by 2000 or till 2025, 35, what must this organization include?
Um, So obviously, every industry is different, whether it's healthcare, automotive, airline, software, banking, whatever it happens to be. There's no doubt that technology has to be key. In the next 10 years, my goodness, I can't even think about where technology is going to be taking us. So advanced technology is going to be a big part of it. Depending on the environment, the human connection, how the workers interact with technology. That'll be really important. Um, the uh, the smoothness, right, of the integration between human and technology, and then working with other organizations, the behavior that you have and the collaboration that you have with others. I think uh, behaving separately and not realizing that you're so much more of interdependent upon other organizations. I think that's where you really need to, how can you maximize what you're doing, working with and in conjunction with other organizations?
Perfect. We've actually wrapped up, and I have my last question, and this is
Okay.
alongside your consulting background as well as
Yeah.
your coaching background. There's a lot of people watching you right now, and I'm pretty sure that most of them are a bit lost, and they'd like to actually get an advice from you as a young professional or as a recent graduate. What would you give them as an advice for the future?
Um, so so as you're getting ready, well, first of all, as you're taking classes, understand the relationship of the classes that you're taking and the relationship that that has to the outside world, right? And to what kind of jobs that you might be looking for. But I think the other thing too is um, gain knowledge from different areas. Uh, Obviously, you spend a lot of time in technology. Make sure that you strengthen your level of technology. No doubt you're going to need that. But also, what's wonderful about being in Europe, you're around people from different countries, different cultures. I think that is so important that that you interact with people from different environments that have different values that you have, um, different beliefs, because that can help you. And then also you question your own. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think as we move forward in life, we're going to find that countries and companies are going to appear more interdependent on each other. And so the more you can understand the global environment, the global world, I think that is something that really can help you. And then, of course, try to be as specific to your discipline as possible. I like the idea of being a generalist, but also recognize, where do you want to be as far as a particular job, and what are all the skills that you need and the qualifications for that, so that you become expert as quickly as you can. That would be my advice.
Thank you very much for your time, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Looking forward for another conversation in the near future.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.